I'm Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report. It's June 20th, 2024. We're live streaming on Rumble, Locals, and YouTube. Share, subscribe, tap the notification bell. And if you'd like to join us for the post-game wrap-up show, it's rubinreport.locals.com. And we are doing a Rubin Report community Q&A. So if you want to get a question in on the fly, if you sign up right now, I've got people with a computer and a wire into the wall. I don't know where all that stuff, the tech from it goes, but you could get us a question live on this show right now. Also, our new newsletter comes out every Thursday at 6 p.m., so you can sign up absolutely free to get a little more insider info. Oh, and I should note that in honor of upcoming July 4th, we've got some new Rubin Report merch, the fancy tumbler, American established 1776. There you go. There are t-shirts. Should have worn the t-shirt, and all sorts of other things in black, white, and all your favorite colors. And today's show, which is, as I said, it's a community Q&A, is also going to focus on my conversation that I had about 2 weeks ago in New York with Chris Cuomo. We showed you one little clip of it yesterday, but we've got 3 or 4 clips for you today, and then we'll frame some of that around Fauci, who again is still back. These people, I mean, just the lack of self-awareness to still be out there pushing the lies and all of this stuff. It's just really incredible. But the reason I want to show you some of the Cuomo clips is because a few people, I did see some people on Twitter, and I got a couple emails, people were like, I don't want to even go to Chris Cuomo's channel. I don't want to support Chris Cuomo. He was horrible on COVID. He's a liar. His brother did this, blah, blah, blah. And I have to say, look, obviously, I have been very critical and made an awful lot of fun of the guy, clearly. But we had a 2-hour, I would say, very respectful conversation in his apartment. So he welcomed me into his apartment, made me a cup of coffee. We had a nice chat. We talked a little bit about tequila at the end. I enjoyed being with the guy. We fundamentally see the world, I think, in largely different ways. But there is some commonality there, too. We're both originally New Yorkers and all that. As I mentioned yesterday, my parents absolutely loved his father, Mario Cuomo, who they wanted to run for president. A lot of people thought he was going to. He was the governor of New York in the 80s. So I think it's worth showing you some of the disagreement that we still have, because if we can't get to a place where we agree on basic truths that are happening now, or well, if we can't agree on basic truths of the things that happened over the last couple of years, then we're never going to agree on what's going on now. So we're going to dive into that and a couple other things, and we'll talk about some higher ed stuff too. But before we do any of that, let me talk to you guys about the Contagion Emergency Kit. Guys, listen up. If you're not stockpiling medications after what we've been through, you're setting yourself up for disaster. The warning signs are everything with this bird flu in the headlines. It's our personal responsibility to be prepared. And fortunately, the wellness company developed a Contagion Emergency Kit, a prescription-only stockpile of life-saving medications, including Tamiflu, ivermectin, HCQ, and Z-Pak, medications that every American should have in their medicine cabinet. Easily order online the one-of-a-kind prescription emergency kit from the wellness company. Each prep kit provides you with a carefully selected assortment of effective medications for bird flu, COVID, and other respiratory illnesses. These include ivermectin, HCQ, Z-Pak, Tamiflu, budesonide, along with a nebulizer. Rest easy knowing that you have emergency meds on hand, along with a guidebook for safe use. Backed by research from experts like Dr. Peter McCullough, every American should have at least one of these kits in their home. Avoid the chaos, wait times, and price of the hospital, and have exactly what you need for as low as the cost of a single doctor's visit. At the end of the day, having these life-saving medications on hand so you won't have to worry about whatever is next. Go to twc.health/Rubin and grab your Contagion Emergency Kit right now. That's twc.health/Rubin. Code Rubin saves you 10% at checkout, plus free shipping. Kits are available only in the US of A. And now back to me. All right, so let's dive into some of the stuff with Chris. Now, again, remember, he invites me into his home. We had a little internal debate, Phoenix and I, about whether I should do the show at all. It's like, here's a guy that I think has pushed so much of the COVID nonsense. He was on CNN for years, prime time, I think lying or at least misrepresenting things on every major story, whether it was Brett Kavanaugh as a serial rapist or Jussie Smollett. You guys know the list of things. And now he's not on CNN anymore. And I was just sort of personally, I'm just being very upfront with you guys, I was just personally like, should I kind of be part of dealing this guy back in? Like, does he deserve to be dealt back in? And ultimately what we decided was it would be worth airing out what some of our differences are and let people decide if they want to watch him anymore, or if they don't care about him, or if I'm able to effectively make my arguments, et cetera, et cetera. So that's exactly what we did. Here we are sparring over the efficacy of the vaccines and Fauci's, what I would say are lies. I don't think Cuomo sees it exactly that way.
A little bit of it is an unfair analysis, period, and to Trump, because he didn't have the vaccine. He made it. I'm not taking away his credit, but I'm saying...
Well, I don't think he deserves credit for it. I think the vaccine was not a vaccine. And, well, the vaccine was not a vaccine. The vaccine did not work. Fauci is on... Well, right now...
It works. It worked. It worked. It's why the hospitalizations came down. It's why the healthcare system...
I know everyone says that, but I don't think there's really any evidence of that.
Yeah, of course
I'm not vaxxed. They're not vaxxed. None of my crew is vaxxed.
You are not the people who should have been made to be vaxxed.
Well, first off, but they were forcing everybody to be vaxxed.
That is going to be something that needs to be reviewed and scrutinized, and I believe ultimately found to have been wrong.
Yeah, but Fauci should be in jail. Do you
for what?
For
what's the crime?
We can do a whole bunch of things.
Just one.
We'd have to decide what the crime is at the end. Let me just go through a few of the things that he did, and then we can figure out what the technical term for the crime is. So just in the last few days, he's admitted that 6 feet social distancing was largely made up. He completely admitted it.
No, he didn't.
Now. Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
What did he say?
We'll do it point by point.
Yeah.
This way. What he said was, I don't know where it came from. I don't know why they said
he's the head of the NIH.
The rule was from the CDC. Bob Redfield, who is the head of the CDC, says to me and to anyone who asks him, Tony had nothing to do with 6 feet. It was us. We gave it to him as the parameter.
It doesn't, but he has to have the wherewithal to say, where did you guys come up with this? You just magically made up something.
Oh, no. They did not make it up. There was a debate in House at the CDC. I know this stuff cold.
No, I believe that they had debates and internal memos about it. And
that's
all
where
of those
it came
things,
from.
But there was nothing backing it. There was nothing backing it.
No, they had tons of stuff backing
There was no evidence that when you went to a restaurant, if you were sitting, you could take your mask off, and COVID could only get the waiter who was standing and had to wear the mask.
But here's not...
And masks don't work at all.
They do work. They don't work. They're not perfect. There's a lot of research that's all over the place.
Okay, so that's just one portion of this. And as you can see, we have a fundamental, I would say the fundamental thing, whether you fully agree with my assessment there or you fully agree with him, is we fundamentally have a difference in trust. He seems to still trust the CDC, trust the NIH, believe that the intentions of a lot of these people, including Fauci, were good. If Fauci got the memo about 6 feet social distancing from the CDC, why didn't he ask about it? Why didn't he say, well, what are the studies on this? Has it ever been done before? Has it been proven to work or anything else? Like, that was my point, right? And we'll get into a bunch more in just a second. But I think the fundamental thing that most of us are dealing with right now is that there is a set of people who seem to trust the institutions. Now, I wish that the CDC and the NIH, and even institutions like CNN and institutions like Harvard, I wish they were worthy of our trust. That would be great. That would be the sign of a functioning system, of a healthy system. But I think we are well past the point where we should be trusting the study came out of here. Oh, and this government bureaucrat said this or that. So that really seems to be the disconnect. And then we continued to get into it here.
Then the vaccine.
Yes.
Joe Biden went on stage and said,
actually
you will not get nor transmit, but they literally changed the definition of the word vaccine for this vaccine. Joe Biden went on stage.
Before. They changed it when mRNA became a dominant research tool for them with Zika and AIDS. They then changed what a vaccine is, that today approximates what's called a therapeutic, because they learned that this new species of viruses that they're dealing with doesn't react the same way that they used to see. So they changed the definition. I don't see anything nefarious in the change. Do I see something problematic in the messaging? Yes, and that's the point you were about to make.
Well, Joe Biden went on stage and said you will not get nor transmit COVID if you get the vaccine. Rachel Maddow gave one of the most ridiculous 5-minute beginnings of her show talking about just repeating what I would say in essence was state propaganda. Why did I not get fooled by all of that stuff? So when I was so that's where I started becoming critical of you and more of the cable news guys, where I was just like, every day I turn on, and I don't mean any of this to own you or any of that. Every day I turn on.
You'll never own Never.
Good. But that every day I turn on the cable news and they're all saying the exact same things. And all I kept saying was, I don't know if this vaccine works. And I don't know if masks work and everything else, but I know you shouldn't be locked in your house. I know the government shouldn't have that power. And I know that I shouldn't be able to force my employees to be injected with something, which is what the government wanted. I don't have 1,000 employees, but the OSHA mandate and everything else. And all I did was remain skeptical of the entire thing. And then to watch everyone go completely insane.
So again, to reiterate the point about trusting the institutions or being skeptical of the institutions, and a guy like Cuomo, and I'm not doing this to own him, and I'll never own you, Chris, you get the point. But on CNN, you worked at a network, CNN, which has lied about all of the big narrative stories. Donald Trump, very fine people on both sides. Jesse Smollett, Covington kids, et cetera, right? Kyle Rittenhouse. We can do the laundry list, putting aside the COVID stuff. So I think a healthy dose of skepticism is probably why you are watching this right now. You're like, oh, maybe I get political predictions wrong. Of course I do, right? Like that. No one wants to be in the political prediction game. It's like being in predicting what's going to happen at the end of a basketball game. Like you're going to get some right, you're going to get some wrong. But the grand narratives that they have sold us, I think there are some people that have been somewhat skeptical of it and largely been proven right. I think I would put myself in that group. And then there's been people who just kind of buy into the thing and then run cover for it after. And I would put Cuomo more in that. But again, we were doing it respectfully. I'm there invited into his home. You could see we were trying to do a dance together that I think probably a healthy society could use a little bit more of. Here we got into something that you may remember when I couldn't even get into Fox when I still lived in LA to talk about COVID because I was not vaccinated with the vaccination that wasn't even a vaccination.
I was supposed to do a hit at Fox in LA during the height of COVID. I was going to do a hit basically debating vaccines and mandates really with Gloria Allred. So Gloria Allred, the legendary civil rights
pairing,
attorney.
Okay.
What's that?
Odd pairing, but okay.
Yeah, strange pair. I had never met her before, or interviewed her before, or anything. But she was going to debate the pro-mandate side, and I was going to do the anti-COVID, anti-mandate side. I get to the studio, and they said, well, where's your passport? I said, well, I don't have a passport. I'm not vaxxed. They would not let me in, so they sent me back
And that
home.
was Fox.
That was Fox. It's the Fox affiliate, not Fox News there, but the local Fox affiliate. Anyway, but I couldn't get in Fox News here either. So nobody's guiltless in all this. Anyway, I go back home and then we do it digitally. And then on air, Gloria Allred, the legendary civil rights attorney, asked me if I was vaxxed on air. Think how insane that is, that she was asking me my private medical information on air. I asked her when the last time she got laid was. She was not too thrilled with that question, and I still didn't get an answer. But when do you think that was?
Let's throw to that old classic right now.
I'm a progressive, proud progressive, I might add, but I also believe in science. And this is really not about rights, it's about life and death. And of course, kids can also be carriers of COVID. And I ask you, Dave, do you think there should not be a mandate for kids in schools to have to get vaccine for chickenpox, for mumps, for polio, for so many other vaccines that they are required to have in order
Gloria,
to go to school?
All of those things were tested for years. As we know, we rushed out this vaccination. But this is not, I'm not saying people should not get vaccinated. I'm saying it should be left up to choice.
Are you a good, decent citizen? Are you vaccinated?
It's nobody's business whether I'm vaccinated. That's like me asking you the last time you got laid. I mean, it's just irrelevant.
All right. So, what's really relevant is that it's one thing if you have the right to choose for your...
My medical history is not your business, nor yours is mine.
Isn't that interesting? She's a civil rights attorney, and I said legendary with Cuomo because she is sort of like the ambulance chaser for civil rights cases. She's been on television for 40 years and asking someone on air if they're vaccinated. Also, how ridiculous in retrospect, now that's, about 3 years ago, how ridiculous does that now come off that she was demanding that children get vaccinated for COVID to go back into schools and everything else. By the way, the chickenpox thing is completely absurd. Every kid gets chickenpox. You get it once and you move on. Actually, the week that I had chickenpox in about second grade, it was one of the best weeks of my life because my buddy John got chickenpox too, and we just hung out and played Super Mario Brothers for a week. Like everything that happened to us was completely ridiculous. It was sold to us, and here's the point, really. It was sold to us by people who lie like Anthony Fauci. Then those lies were laundered, unfortunately, I would say in this case, by media people like Cuomo. And again, I'm not saying that to own you, Chris. And then it was further laundered by people who were supposed to protect our civil rights, like Gloria Allred. And that is why things seemingly get worse, because all of the people we are supposed to trust, the people in the institutions that we are supposed to trust when the shit hits the fan, they have failed us miserably. And then not only do they fail us miserably, all of the people who get everything wrong, they basically never have a mea culpa. They never say sorry. They never say they got anything wrong. They blame, they pretend it didn't happen. And then, of course, they try to point the finger at people who just were a little bit skeptical. And Anthony Fauci, I mentioned that he's back making the media rounds. Here he is on the televised mental institution known as MSNBC, and he's still going after people in red states who didn't bow to him.
To follow that question, we now head into a moment where, because of that divisiveness, it's become a political issue. Like vaccinations in particular have become a political issue, where you have not just Donald Trump, but other Republicans saying, no, don't take the COVID vaccine. We have other prominent figures saying, no, you should not take other vaccines as well for other things that have been standard, that everyone has received for decades. So with this much of disinformation and anger and just flat out vaccine hesitancy, how nervous are you about our ability to handle the next pandemic, whatever it might be?
I'm very concerned about that, because the misinformation and disinformation about absolutely scientifically proven life-saving interventions, it's astonishing to me that so many people, by political ideology, will make a decision that would actually endanger their lives. I mean, the facts are, and as a physician and a scientist, this is very painful to me, that if you look at red states versus blue states, because of people getting less vaccinated because you're a Republican versus a Democrat, there are more deaths and hospitalizations in red states versus blue states. That's horrible that happens, that people suffer and die because of misinformation that's related to a political ideology.
God, he's awful, and it just keeps getting worse. First off there, I don't have the empirical evidence of what he's saying, and I bet you he doesn't either, as far as red state versus blue state deaths. We can look into that, but it's not a one-to-one comparison anyway. I don't know what the answer to that is. I do not know. But states are different as it pertains to weather and how much sun people are getting and other behaviors, how people eat, and people tend to be a little bit heavier, say, in a place like Chicago, and a little bit thinner in a place like Florida. Like, there's a zillion other factors that go into it, but everything's perfectly fits the narrative that he's been pushing this entire time. Also, this line where he's upset that people won't trust scientifically proven things. Again, this is the same guy who lied, 100% lied about masks, made up 6-foot social distancing. I don't care if it was handed to him on a piece of paper from the CDC. He repeated it without doing any research. It was complete nonsense, beginning to end. What happened to natural immunity, right? How come I got COVID? And then my knees hurt a little bit for a couple of days. David got a little bit sicker than me, but then we had natural immunity, and I've probably had COVID 3 or 4 times since. And you just used to get sick back in the day, and then the body creates antibodies, and then you maybe should also do things like eat right and exercise and get outside and all of the rest of the stuff, while they're literally locking you at home and having you order in Chinese and pizza every day. So it's just absolutely extraordinary. And also just the way the entire interview is framed. People won't trust you anymore. And oh my God, you are the victim here, Fauci. And yes, we've got more of that. Here's Joe Scarborough filleting Anthony Fauci.
I'm just curious how frustrating it is to you that people will go back and pick up something that you may have said in March of 2020, or something that another health official or a politician may have said later in that year, whether it's about masks or vaccines or anything. We didn't know. None of us knew where this was going. None of us knew, like, for instance, how long would the vaccine work? Would we need one booster every 5 years? Would we need one every 5 months? How frustrating is it to you that people look back with 2020 hindsight and judge you when you and the rest of the world was in the fog of war?
You know, it is quite frustrating, Joe, and that relates exactly to the answer to the question just a moment ago, where I was saying that people really don't appreciate. I don't blame them for that, but they don't appreciate that we were dealing with a moving target. And when we were saying things in the beginning, wear a mask or not, how the virus is spread. I mean, originally it was felt understandably but incorrectly by the CDC, that it is spread by the same way that flu is spread, namely mostly by droplets, when in fact most of the transmission is not only by not droplets, it's by aerosol, but also 50 to 60% of the people who transmit it have no symptoms at all. We didn't know that in the beginning. It was a changing, moving target. You're absolutely right. Was it frustrating? It was terribly frustrating because people like to take things out of context and do a gotcha. That's part of the reporting.
It's just so grotesque. It's like, all right, dude, okay, let's even giving you every bit of grace that you don't deserve. Then how about we just shouldn't trust you anymore? Oh, the CDC thought it was droplets, turned out. Okay, fine. Let's just say you, Anthony, you had the best of intentions the entire time while you weren't letting people go to their grandmother's funeral, or while you were literally encouraging people to lock their 8-year-old child in their bedroom for 12 days for quarantine, and all of the absurd shit that you did. If we grant you all of the grace on that, then how about just step away? Just go away, right? You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Like, how about at least that? How about stop showing your face? And it's just gross the way Scarborough asked those questions, that Fauci is the victim here and more people should listen to him and everything else. No, all of the lack of trust in some of the things that maybe we should trust, vaccines of the past that perhaps we should trust, the reason it is broken is because of you, not because of us that were questioning the lunacy that you people pushed on us. Here's late night comedian Stephen Colbert glazing Anthony Fauci because it just never ends. Filleting, glazing, go.
Nice to see you again, Doctor.
Good to be with you, Stephen.
Always a pleasure to have you on. I gotta say, you are a spry 83 years old. Have you thought about running for president? No interest whatsoever. Well, you served under seven presidents. Okay. Politicization of science is dangerous, but it's not a new thing.
Right.
This has happened in the past. You've dealt with it in the past. Have you seen anything like the way it is now, though? Because certainly just a few days ago, your testimony down in Washington, D.C. made headlines for the hostility that you received.
Right.
Is this, even for your long and storied career and being involved with all these politicians, does this seem like something new to you?
Quite new and disturbing. Back when I first became director of the Institute, which was, I had been director for almost 40 years. In the beginning, there was always politics. There was people of different ideology. There was center left, center right. They disagreed and they, sometimes would argue with each other. But at the end of the day, there was civility and respect for each other. What we're seeing now is what you had mentioned, Stephen. It's vitriol and pure hostility. So I would get questioned in a very strict, pushing way, maybe back in other administrations. But at the end of the hearing, they would come over to you and say, good job, sorry that we had to be tough with our questionings, but, we want to get to the right place. Now it's pure attack.
Yeah, Fauci's the victim. They're being mean to him. People don't come up to him after the hearings and give him a hand job. He can just go to Joe Scarborough's house for that, I suppose. It's just absolutely absurd. Again, I'm just showing you these videos to see the way that they keep bringing him back. Dude, just go away if nothing else. That's all we ask. And okay, so the reason I'm showing you this also to the backdrop of the Cuomo thing is that what you were seeing there is that Cuomo and I just have a fundamental difference on who to trust, and I happen to trust actually my own mind and I would say common sense, and you have a degree of skepticism when it comes to things, and I don't think that the system is necessarily looking out for me, and he kind of does. But it's not just obviously COVID as it pertains to trusting the system and everything else. The big thing over the last couple of years that's taken over our institutions, of course, is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which, as you know, should be DIE, die, because that's really what they want most of us to do. We had a fundamental difference of agreement on that as well, Cuomo and I, and I think I maybe got him a little bit here to change his mind, perhaps. You decide.
You know how he has been with racists and alt-right people. He has been very hands-off and very delicate in his treatment of them.
But I would say Joe Biden is far more in bed with racists than Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib.
Oh, you mean racism.
But those are the real racists we have to worry about. Those are the racists who are ruining this city. Those are the racists who are taking over our institutions. Those are the racists that are going to make it.
Why isn't it the same as saying, you worry about Omar, the people worry about Matt Gaetz? Neither of them have any real power.
Well, she was on the Foreign Intelligence Committee. I mean, they kicked her off now, but I mean, she has a huge amount of power. I mean, look what she's amassed in Minnesota. The policies that they are trying to put forward to the country, you may not like their tactics and you may question their motives or whatever, but they are not trying to put in policies that would actually systemically put racism back into the country. The left and DEI and all of that, they are. That is
but DEI, the point of DEI, you can talk about its execution, you can talk about degree and duration, but the whole point was to stop minorities from being excluded from places and institutions that matter in American advancement. That was the point.
I'm not sure that's what the point was. I think that would be a sort of, pardon the way I'm going to say this, I would say that would be a slightly naive way of looking at it. I think that these people that are pushing this stuff are way more nefarious maybe than you think.
What do you think they want?
I think they actually want to upend all of the meritocracy that America has been built on. I think they would gladly shred all of our founding documents. I think that's very clear. Listen to what they're saying at these campus protests. They're starting with Israel, but the United States is the big fish. I 100% know that Chris Cuomo as a father, 4 years from now when your son is out of college and he goes to get a job on Wall Street, or if he wants to be a doctor or whatever, does not want him to be discriminated on by the basis of the color of his skin, nor how much money and how famous his dad is and everything else. And that is what they literally have systemically put into the country. Supreme Court just reversed affirmative action as it pertains to college admissions, which was absolutely right. You don't solve past discrimination by discriminating against Asians of today, right? You don't do that.
In your opinion, they would say that, no, we are just trying to make sure this group isn't discriminated against anymore. Not that you are.
But I don't think it's an opinion to say that well, I suppose it's an opinion at some level, but I think it's an empirical truth that discrimination based on immutable characteristics is bad.
But they're not saying no white. They're saying more other than white.
Doesn't matter. Thus you must discriminate.
Okay, so I think you saw how hard I was trying not to go after him personally or impugn his motives or anything else. But you could also see that when you make a clear and cogent argument to somebody and then make it personal too. That's why I brought up his son. He had brought up his son earlier, said his son was just graduating high school, going to college. When I made it about the discrimination that his son will face, because his son is growing up rich, his dad is, was a TV star, but certainly influential. His grandfather was the governor. His uncle was the governor of New York. That the system, the DEI system that he basically thinks is okay, is going to discriminate against his own child. And I think that started breaking him up. Also, a bit of his argument was the best of intentions. Well, the intentions are we want to solve some of this stuff. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So you can't say, okay, we're going to just artificially inflate the amount of, say, black and brown students we're going to bring into these schools. So they will be able to have lesser grades, lesser qualifications than these Asian kids. Well, then you are ultimately creating racism, because what do you think will happen a generation later when a whole bunch of Asian kids, it's Asians and it's Jews and it's whites, of course, too, that when but it largely is happening. We know for sure it was happening as it pertains to Asians at Harvard. What do you think is going to happen after a generation of that goes by? You think Asians will be racist against black people? Probably yes. They'll be like, look what they're getting. So all a system can do is say we are going to be colorblind. And sure, some groups have a little more and some groups have a little bit less, and that has to do with culture, and that has to do with family, and that has to do with hard work and everything else. And there is no perfect system. Humans are imperfect, so we create imperfect systems. But I want to connect what we talked about there as it pertains to DEI to show how granularly in this country things are changing. Here is University of Florida President Ben Sasse talking about how professors are now flocking to Florida because we have dismantled DEI. So we've taken it out of our schools. And what's happening is real professors, the few sane Ivy League professors that are left, guess what? They want out of Columbia, they want out of NYU, and they want out of Cornell, and they want to be in the free state of Florida.
the Hamilton Center that we've been building, and thank you for some of the faculty that you've loaned us, at the University of Florida, we have 6,400 professors. We have 16 colleges and schools, but Hamilton is our latest, and they're currently called a center, but will eventually be upgraded to a college or school. I think Hamilton is probably the most sought-after job in higher education in America right now. We had over 1,200 applicants in about a 10-month period this year to become a professor there. And New York Times and other places have tried to write pieces and call the Hamilton Center a right-wing this or that. It's just classically liberal. Like, it's not right of center. We're not interested in your politics. And lots of the faculty who are applying are from Ivies and Ivy Plus, top 15 institutions who are way left of center. I just happen to know a lot of them personally. And so that's the only reason I know anything about their politics. But they just want to teach at a place that's humble enough to say, we're wrestling with big questions here, and political indoctrination is boring. That's not what an educational institution exists to do.
So that's the white pill of everything I've done here today so far, is that the sorting is actually happening. People post-COVID are moving to places that are more in line with their values, hopefully voting the right way when they get there. Then the institutions are having a major sorting, right? Like, if you're going to spend $80,000 a year to send your kid to Columbia so they become a member of Hamas, okay, have at it. But you could also perhaps spend way less, send your kids to a school in Florida where they will be taught a classically liberal education. And that sorting over time actually is the strength of America. It's the beauty of what the founders did with federalism. It's the beauty of what choice is. It's the beauty of bottom up instead of top down authority. And that's just what we need more of. Got RubinReport.locals.com community Q&A coming up in just a second. If you want to get some questions in on the fly, Adi is sitting at a computer right now. And if you join us on Locals, you can get a question in on this live stream. It is absolutely incredible what we can do with technology these days. Before we do it, let me talk to you guys about 8 Sleep. Guys, I'm sure you've heard of 8 Sleep already. Their buzzworthy sleep technology called the Pod can be added to your existing mattress like a fitted sheet to automatically cool down or warm up each side of your bed, and in turn improve your sleep quality dramatically. Today I want to share some exciting news because the Pod just got an upgrade. 8 Sleep has launched their newest generation of the Pod, Pod 4 Ultra. It cools, it heats, and now it elevates automatically. It's also clinically proven to give you up to 1 hour more quality sleep every night. Pod 4 Ultra can cool down each side of the bed to 20 degrees below room temperature, keeping you and your partner cool even in a heat wave. There's just nothing else like it on the market. Pod 4 Ultra also introduces an adjustable base that fits between your mattress and your bed frame to add reading and sleeping positions for the best unwinding experience. And for those snore-heavy nights, the Pod can detect your snoring and automatically lift your head by a few degrees to improve airflow and stop you or your partner snoring. Plus, with Pod 4 Ultra, you can leave your wearables on the nightstand. Its integrated and imperceptible sensors track your sleep time, sleep phases, heart rate, and HRV with up to 99% tracking accuracy. Just add it easily onto any bed. Head over to 8sleep.com/Rubin and use code Rubin to get $350. That's right, $350 off Pod 4 Ultra. Currently shipped to US, Canada, United States, UK, Europe, and Australia. And let me see, just for the record, because I freaking love this thing. How was my sleep last night? Let's see. How was Dave's sleep last night? Pretty decent. I had an 88 sleep score last night. It tracks when you're awake, when you're getting REM sleep. It's really, really wonderful. All right, let's get into a community Q&A. Here we go. James says, I would ask Dave to comment on the question San Francisco Mayor London Breed posed to her chief opponent, Mark Farrell. Quote, you were at the Harvey Milk LGBT Democratic Club and couldn't name any LGBT advisors to your campaign. You were at the debate last week and couldn't name any drag queens on your own, she said to Farrell. This is an opportunity to redeem yourself if you could name 3 LGBTQ advisors to your campaign and 3 drag queens in San Francisco. Okay, so this is true, actually. I'm going to skip the rest of the question because we have some video of this. They're at a San Francisco. Think of all of the crazy, psychotic shit going on in San Francisco. The zombie apocalypse on the streets, the drugs, the homelessness, the urban blight, the destruction of the middle class. And instead of dealing with any of those things properly at a debate, they're debating how many drag queens do you know? So before I even comment on this any further, we actually have some of the video from the debate.
I'd like to ask Mark a question. You were at the Harvey Milk LGBT Democratic Club and couldn't name any LGBT advisors to your campaign. You were at the debate last week and couldn't name any drag queens on your own. I was wondering if you could, this is an opportunity to redeem yourself. And if you could name 3 LGBTQ advisors for your campaign and 3 drag queens in San Francisco.
So we're not going to revise the drag queen question from last week. But what I will say is I'm incredibly proud of the support that I have from our LGBTQ plus community here in the San Francisco.
Let me be very clear about this during Gay Pride Month. There is no such thing as the fucking LGBTQI two-spirit plus community. The trans people want to chop the genitals off the gays and the lesbians. The bis are just a little confused. These people have nothing to do with each other. The two-spirit and the queer thing, nobody cares. Nobody cares. You like to wear a dog mask. Okay, fine. Just do it in the privacy of your own home. But the absurdity, the profound absurdity that the mayor of San Francisco, who has demolished that city, which was one of the most beautiful cities in all of America only 15 years ago, that they have so destroyed that city. And the question that they are dealing with is, can my opponent name 3 drag queens? I can't name 3. RuPaul. Can anyone else in this room name a drag queen? George Santos, okay? Anyone else? Yeah. Like, think how absolute, you people deserve whatever you get. And that is, again, why federalism is great. And the great sorting that I just talked about is great. I want nothing to do with you people. You want San Francisco, you want your drag queen advisors, have at it. I just want nothing to do with you. And guess what? You can't have our shit. That's going to be really the problem, because the more that we separate, they're going to keep coming for our stuff. And that really will be the problem. But congratulations, San Francisco. Go for it. Give me one more drag queen, or give me a funny drag queen name. There must be another drag queen out there. Who? Daddy Satan. Daddy Satan. Phoenix is a pro-Palestine. Daddy Satan is a pro-Palestine drag queen. Glenn says, do you ever worry you will miss out on commenting on a big story when you take your August breaks? I guess I think this is my 8th year doing it. We'll check. It's either my 7th or 8th year. I go completely off the grid for August. No TV, no phone, no electronics, nothing, and no news. And then, of course, I come back with the big guest host and get caught up on everything. The first couple of years, I guess I was worried that I would miss little things, and I did miss things. I missed the Afghanistan withdrawal. That was obviously a huge news story a couple of years back. I missed John McCain's death one year. I missed different things each year. I missed one of the Republican conventions, this or that. I'm not worried. The whole purpose of me doing it is so that I can come back refreshed and with fresh eyes to do this, right? To be able to look at the news and communicate it to you guys in a way that hopefully is a little bit lighter and a little bit funnier and a little bit more honest than what most people are doing. I say that to the backdrop of just showing you those clips with Cuomo. And I think it's one of the reasons I have not gone crazy while doing this. There's a lot of people that do something similar to this that have kind of gone a little bit nutty or off the rails or anything else. But for me, when I realize, and I'm 2 weeks in and I'm like, all right, well, whatever's happening in the world, it's happening, and okay, I didn't comment on it, and I'll get to it. You realize the world goes on and on with or without you, and I think that perspective, and then just actually literally just giving my brain a chance to kind of reset, and I've told you guys how suddenly I can remember, like out of nowhere, I'll be like, whatever happened to that kid Rich? In 2nd grade, I used to sit next to him. I wonder what happened to him. And I'll just start thinking about something that I just haven't thought about for 20, 30 years because the brain has room to wander a little bit. Sometimes days go by where, we'll be sitting at the beach and we barely talk. I don't even say that much, which I kind of like too. It's just a decompression of all of the craziness. So no, I'm not worried. I think this year is particularly nutty in that I suppose Donald Trump could end up in jail and Joe Biden could end up in the old age home or some other version of both of those. things, and I could come back, and it's September, whatever it is, September 3rd that I come back, and it'll be completely two different candidates running for president. That does seem a little bizarre. Also, it does feel like there's a world war at some level being ramped up. So this one seems particularly weird, but that's exactly why I do it. Jeffrey says, right-wing news outlets are showing how Biden is losing his mind. Left-wing news outlets are showing how Trump is losing it. Is RFK Jr. Really the only candidate with a functioning brain? Well, first off, I don't think there's any comparison between the degradation of Joe Biden's brain and whatever cognitively is going on with him and Trump, right? Trump still, for all of his silliness, and yes, he repeats phrases and just he glosses over things and whatever, he can extemporaneously talk for 2 hours. He's directionally right about most of the stuff, and I just don't see a real comparison between the two of them. But to your point, yes, left-wing media will always go out of their way to show him in the most uncharitable thing, and I suppose right-wing media will do the same thing when it comes to Joe Biden. You know, RFK, ironically, he had brainworms, but he might have the most functioning brain out of all of them. Is he officially out of the debate? I didn't think he was going to get in, but I think... So he will not be in the debate, which is a damn shame, and it really is, it's totally unjust for several reasons, but I would say the prime reason is he's still polling somewhere in most national polls between 10 and 20%. Knowing that most of our elections come down to 1%, 2%, the guy with 10 or 20 in the middle, depending on which way he polls, he could fully affect the result of the election. So we should be able to hear from him, whether you want Trump to win or whether you want Biden to win. But I suppose that is not going to happen. He is getting on more and more ballots, so I think that that's good at least. Shelley says, hey, Dave, at what age did you realize you wanted to be a stand-up comic? You mentioned going to college and probably did not have comedy as your major. That being said, how did your parents take the new venture of yours? Did they believe it was your passion or just a dream that would not come to fruition? This too will pass. Moment in time. Glad you're living your dream. Thanks. Well, it's funny. My friends growing up, everybody was funny. Like that was the language that we spoke in. Like we were playing video games, playing basketball, and just being funny. Like that was it. And I always thought somebody was going to be a comedian. And my last day of college, literally my last day of college, I had done all my finals, handed in all my papers. I was in a public speaking class, and it was the last thing I was going to do, the last class I was going to attend or anything. And we were allowed to talk about whatever we wanted, like give a 10-minute speech on something. And I just did this recap of what it was like to be in college. And I sat down on a chair like Bill Cosby himself. And Cosby was my favorite stand-up comic. In 1983, I saw Himself. I was 7 years old. The title of his HBO special was Himself. And I just could not believe anything was that funny. My stomach was buckled and in pain from laughing so hard. I just couldn't believe it. And I did basically a 10-minute recap of what it was like to be in college. And made it funny. And half the class was looking at me like I was insane, and half the class was cracking up. And then a week later, I was at New York Comedy Club in New York City, 23rd and 3rd, and I started doing stand-up. And then it was, 15 years of doing that in New York and doing some stuff on the road, and then eventually doing it in LA. And I think all of it led to my ability to do a book tour where I largely do stand-up for an hour, pretty much kind of off the top of my head, but I'm just kind of messing around with everybody. And I never wanted to be one of these like jokey joke, I'm going to get on the Tonight Show, here's my little 5-minute thing. It's sort of the way I do this show. Like I want it to be kind of thoughtful and then funny at times, and it's kind of corny and also silly and ridiculous and straightforward and just a big mix of a bunch of stuff. As for my parents, my dad basically was like, well, you can do whatever you want, but you got to figure out a way to pay the bills. You can't live here forever. So I did all sorts of odd jobs as a stand-up. My first job out of college, I was assistant manager at electronics boutique, which you guys know as GameStop now. But I was a waiter, I was a bartender, I did promotions where I'd go to colleges, and anything I could do to rub two nickels together so that I could survive. And I guess it all worked out to some degree or another. Sulana says, hey, Dave, the analogy of Pakistan, which Douglas Murray so eloquently explained in the Monk debate the other day, is a very good analogy to confront the Zionism argument, I think. Do you think we should all use it to debunk the pro-Hamas group like Breonna Joy Gray, who are now openly calling for the eradication of a Jewish state in favor of some utopian democracy, which of course would be an Arab theocracy? And then, Sulana, I do want to note, you gave me a really nice historical piece on Pakistan there, but I thought it would be a bit much to read right now. In essence, the short answer is yes, that post-World War II, the entire world and the borders of the Middle East and across Europe were changed and altered, and states were created and everything else. as Douglas pointed out in the Monk debate, amongst a zillion other things that he said that were quite brilliant, if you were relentlessly trying to destroy and upend Pakistan, and then you were like, but it has nothing to do with the Pakistani people, I really love them, everyone would know you were like a maniac and an idiot and a liar, and probably a racist to some extent. To the extent that Pakistanis obviously is not a race, it's a nation, but you get the point. I think that there are many, many arguments to be made that make the Zionism argument very simple. Like there are basic things. Judaism is the first of the monotheistic religions. Everyone knows the story of Exodus, which is the Jews going from Egypt to the ancient land of Israel. You go to Israel and you see they're unearthing things in Hebrew from thousands of years ago. Jesus of Nazareth was from Israel, right? Like everyone knows all of these things. There's 22 Arab nations that all are only for largely Arab and Muslim people. There is no coexistence. Women are not treated well. Minorities are not treated well. There's no Christians left in any of these countries, virtually no Christians. There's basically no Jews left in any of these countries. The Middle East has one tiny place the size of New Jersey where there's 2 million Arab Muslims who can serve on the Supreme Court and have in Israel and all the rest of the stuff. You go to Jerusalem, and we showed you videos of this when we were in Jerusalem, where there'll be an ultra-Orthodox Jewish man standing next to a Muslim woman in a burqa, and they're on the bus together. Like, it is the only place of anything related to coexistence in the entire part of that world. It's the only place in the Middle East that has anything remotely close to progressive ideology or liberal ideology, and that's the place that the progressives hate the most. Ironically, if Israel behaved the exact same way as an Arab nation, they would all hate it because they would say it was too liberal, right? Like, so it's all completely idiotic. And I think there's many good arguments. The Pakistan one is one of them. LW says, Dave, you said you had 2 Teslas sitting out back. Does that mean you have no intention in the future of a long road trip? No, so we do have 2 Teslas. We only had 1 car for many, many years. Then we had the kids. We realized we needed 2 cars. But you know, the superchargers are all over the country. You can drive coast to coast. You can drive from Miami, Florida down south. You can go in the east, and you can go all the way to Northwest California or Oregon and supercharge all along the way. It's going to take you a little bit more time, but the superchargers, Elon's done a great job where the superchargers now charge way, way faster. So I have the Model X. I mean, you can basically go from no charge to full charge probably in about 20 minutes. And you have a beautiful screen in that Tesla where they have apps for Netflix and everything else. So you can sit there and you can watch Netflix. And most of the superchargers, at least in the bigger city areas, are usually somewhere that it's a nice outdoor mall or whatever. Some of them are in a little more remote spot. So you just get out of the car and you go have lunch or whatever. So yes, it would make the drive a bit longer. I've done the cross country thing once. We did it one time when we moved in 2013 from New York to Cali. It is absolutely, Tesla or not, it is something that everyone should do. Every American should do it. When you drive across this great country and you see the vastness and you see the change in foliage and from mountains to plains and the beauty of the sunsets and the sunrises and all of that, and the difference in the people and the weather, and you see that this is so freaking extraordinary what we have in this country, that perhaps we should not give it up. Jay from Boise says, I have a completely non-confirmed theory. The reason why the left pushed to shut down American energy production in the name of climate control is because most of the stateside energy supports the Republican Party. What do you think of this? I don't think it's that crazy. I think that that's probably one layer of it. I would say that the big layer of it is that the reason they are trying to shut down stateside energy and they want us off oil is not because of climate change. It's because they want to institute huge governmental authoritarian power over humans and decide how much you drive your car, or as we covered yesterday, whether you will even own your car or have to borrow your car, or how often you can be on a plane while they are on their private jets. Like, most things just come down to control. AOC 7 years ago, when she said we have 12 years left to live, unless she is a complete retard, which I do think is possible, she knew it was a lie. Right? But they lie because, as James Lindsay often points out, everything is about the revolution, right? So every single thing that they do, whether it's, burning down buildings in honor of George Floyd, or trying to push Jews out of Colombia while wearing Hamas masks, or telling you that you have to give up your gas car or your gas stove to stop climate change. It's all in the name of the communist revolution. So I think when you start seeing that, as opposed to what Chris Cuomo was doing, where he was like, well, DEI was originally brought in because people wanted minorities to, and it's like, okay, well, we can play this game forever where they destroy everything and we just never call out why they're doing it. Or we can be like, oh, we know what they do, we know what the game plan is, and we're not going to play with them anymore. I think that would be a bit of a better tactic. KCMTL says, is it better to call Justin Trudeau a douchebag or a scumbag? I like douchebag. I'm not 100% sure what a douchebag is, and I kind of don't want to know, but douche is a funny word. Douchebag, scumbag is sort of standard stuff. I would say he's more of a douchebag. Yeah, a douchebag is a douche. It has something to do with downstairs in the feminine regions, and he also, he's trans or something, right? So like it seems right for him. Lori says, you have shared your humble beginnings, cans of tuna, and sleeping on couches trying to make it. Now that you've made it big, what is the most important thing that you want to leave for your kids? Man, well, I did definitely have those lean years. I told you I had a buddy who was in food service, and he would bring me industrial-sized cans of tuna that I would eat for weeks, and industrial-sized cans of soup that would go to restaurants. My sodium levels and my mercury levels, I'm sure, in the early 2000s, probably I should have been quarantined for that. So I had those lean years. I mean, I'm talking scrounging up a little bit of change from my roommate's coffee can so I could buy a cup of coffee. Like it was definitely tough in some of those years. Living, I had a couple different apartments, but also like living on friends' couches for a while and all that stuff. What would I want to leave the kids? Well, I mean, if you mean like the monetary stuff, like I would hope that I would leave them. Well, it's really not the monetary stuff. I hope that for the next 18 years or so, that I'm able to fill them up with enough of the good stuff and the right things and the truth that they will go on a great adventure and do more amazing things than I've done. Like that, I guess, would be the real piece of it. We have discussed with our family planners and financial people, like we're not putting aside for college, really. We're putting aside a fund so that if hopefully they have their head on straight and one of them comes up to me, post high school and like, Dad, I want to travel for a little bit and then this is what I want to do. Well, there's some funds to do that. But I don't, it's not like I want to like buy houses for everybody and all of that stuff. I think, the struggle is also part of it. And that's also the challenge for anyone. Once you get a little something, like if you just hand it to your kids, why do so many kids of fairly wealthy parents, so many of them will go crazy in drugs and blah, blah, blah. Because the struggle is real too. Just being handed everything is not good. So but that will certainly be a challenge that we will have to address. Olaf says, do you have any flags flying outside your home? I'm thinking you don't have the rainbow alphabet plus flag. No, we do not have the flag of the trans terrorists in front of our house. We don't have, there's a ton of, this is Florida. There's a ton of American flags here. We don't have one outside. Maybe we'll do it finally for this July 4th. We have discussed it, but we do have a massive, I think we have a picture of it. So we have a huge American flag that's in the hallway, which led to our old studio inside the house. That's really not illustrating how big it is, but that flag was given to me. I wish I could remember the guy's name, by a former member of the armed services who, I think it's a World War II flag that he got in France, if I'm not mistaken. I wish I had the specifics. I'll have to dive into my email and check on that. Long story short, I had mentioned one day on the show a couple of years ago that I wanted an authentic flag to hang in the house somewhere, and somebody reached out to me, and I met him in LA, and I should know the story a little bit better. I'm sorry for that. We'll double check on that. The Eurasian says, in those clips you played of your interview with Chris Cuomo, you were spot on, bravo. Do you think your perspective on DEI will have any effect on his remaining followers, all 20 of them? Or do you think such people are hopelessly brainwashed and we should just focus our attention on the uninformed moderates? Well, look, that gets to a bit of what I said my trepidation was before we did the interview. It's like, there are a million cable news hosts. They're largely interchangeable. I do not mean this as an attack on Chris Cuomo specifically, but they are just someone who sits in a chair and pretty much reads what's on the teleprompter. As I keep pointing out to you guys, when I show you the lies of Joy Reid or of Joe Scarborough or these MSNBC people every day, when you start understanding that the reason they have that job is because it is their job to lie, which is why they never correct themselves, right? So why is it that I correct myself sometimes live on air? Like sometimes I make a mistake at the beginning, or I read the numbers wrong, or I just misremember something, like, and then I correct myself, and it's not a big deal. It's like, I actually kind of like doing it. It shows I'm human and okay. But when you realize they're paid to lie, then it starts becoming a lot clearer. So I don't know that I changed Chris Cuomo's mind on anything. I do think that the DEI thing, as it pertained to relating to his son, I think I probably got somewhere on that. The COVID stuff, he's pretty damn in on it. Like I don't think we're really changing him on that. But again, these things, it's sort of like when I talk about Bill Maher all the time, the end goal, as much as I like Bill, is not so that Bill one day will like sit down and, we're going to be at Club Random smoking a joint and having tequila, and he's going to be like, you know what, Dave, you're right, I'm voting for Trump, let's go. The point is that the more you illustrate the truth to these people, they have huge audiences. And I believe that, just like I think you guys are bright, I think that there are bright people that watch a lot of these other shows. And if you can get them there, that's more important than whether I've been able to get Chris Cuomo not to believe in DEI or Bill Maher to vote for Donald Trump. Chipster says, will y'all be hanging out at home or doing day trips or going on an actual vacation while off the grid? So David and I will disappear for a little bit to an unknown location and just decompress. And it's good to just, just have the two of us, and kids will be well taken care of and all that. We'll be doing some day trips as well. We'll hopefully see a little bit of family and just kind of relax and be in the pool and just really just take it easy. We're going to work out. We're going to eat right. Like, come back refreshed. That really is the goal. All right, we've got John Bachman on Newsmax in just a couple of minutes, so I got to go quick here. Tappy says, Dave, this is the only social media I do. You're referring to locals, I assume. So I'm wondering why someone doesn't point out to Joy Reid that she's basically wearing a Trump wig. That is a good point. I mean, it is cultural appropriation. You've got a black woman with blonde hair. I mean, I don't care about that stuff. They do. But apparently she took the wig off yesterday. And Elizabeth says, Dave, do you have any fun birthday plans this year? That's right. My birthday is next Wednesday, June 26th. I'm having the whole team over. A couple other friends from my Florida crew, many of them who've been on the show. And I think we may have just scored an excellent chef for that evening. I'm not going to cook for you people on my birthday. That's how it's going to be. All right. We leave you with a cold close, and so we will not have a post game, right? Or we do? We can do it. Yes, we are going to have a post game quickly before Bachman. RubinReport.locals.com. Goodbye.
My choice! My choice!